Hi, Ella.
Hello, Leora.
We're in Istanbul. We met some time ago, and we decided to start a journey where we're gonna have like this weekly lesson talk, and the theme is Parashat Shavua, and Parashat Shavua is in English it's Torah portion, and the Torah, the five books that were, according to tradition, given to Moses, Moshe, in Mount Sinai, are the first part of the Bible, and they are divided into 54 portions that Jews have been reading for at least 1400 years in a cycle. And it's something very central in Jewish tradition that you read it, we read it every Saturday in the morning, pray, and then the next parasha on Saturday at noon, and on Monday and Thursday in synagogue, and we talk about it and interpret it, and so it's very essential. So we're going to talk about some topic that is connected to the portion of the Torah and connected to ideas and thoughts from Islam. So we're in Istanbul. This is where we met. We do it on Zoom because today is Sunday, curfew time, and Allah is on the European side, I'm the Asian side. And Allah, introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Anat Tahoudi. I'm a Palestinian born in Jerusalem that was raised in the United States, and I've been in Istanbul 9 months now.
And why are you in Istanbul?
Came here with my family. At the time, my wife, who was pregnant, unfortunately, I was denied entry into Israel. She was able to get in through some hardship, but she finally got in. And now I have a 5-month-old son that I have yet to see. He's almost 6 months now.
Inshallah, we'll see him soon.
Sure.
And why couldn't you get in? You were born in Jerusalem, right?
Correct. My residency was revoked. Jerusalemites that stay away from Israel for 2 years, 24 months, their residency is revoked. And then they have to come back and try to get it back again. So unfortunately, when my family immigrated to the United States, they stayed the first time longer than 2 years. And because of that, the Israeli authorities revoked the residency. So I'm considered a foreigner now.
So this is part of the Israeli mechanism that actually I'm here in Istanbul also because of the same reason. So we can say that Zionism united us.
Correct.
So I was an activist. And for that matter, like for what I'm doing now, I was brought up in a religious, modern Orthodox family, which was of course right-wing because it's mandatory in that society. And I always thought different, and I became an activist. And in the last decade or so, I didn't find any place to express my vision, my thoughts. The left wing is westernized. It doesn't have any Middle Eastern vision. It's just busy with protesting against the current system and not thinking of another system, not dealing with the connection to Judaism, the connection between Judaism and Zionism. And when COVID started, I understood that something, we are on the verge of the end, and I would not stay in Israel. I was so frustrated. I cannot stay in Israel if I cannot influence. And I found myself in Istanbul, which is like a Middle Eastern culture and vibes where I can feel at home. So yeah, okay, so from Zionism, let's move on. We're starting the book of Exodus, which is the book of redemption. And I do this, for me, it's important because I feel that the Torah is like, it's universal. It tells the story of humanity. Abraham is from Mesopotamia, which is the first empire to evolve. And from him, we get also he had two sons, Yitzhak is like continued the Jewish tribe, and Ismail the, is what we consider to be the father of Islam. And I believe that this book deals with slavery in a way which is relevant to our times. So before we start, as I said, like we read the Torah. This is the way we intertwine the Torah into our lives. We read it every week. But how do you read the Quran?
We pray 5 times a day, and throughout those prayers, we have to use or recite different chapters. So throughout the day, you're reciting various chapters of the Quran on a personal level. And then on a, if you will call it a global level, we hear it all around us. It's played, I shouldn't say it's played, but it's listened to. People listen to it in their cars, on their iPhones, on their smartphones in general. So, but generally it's recited at least 5 times a day during prayer. And they don't say the same surahs. They do say the same Fatiha, which is the beginning, but the second part changes throughout the day, and there's a third and a fourth part. So many times a day, there's different parts of the Quran being recited by that individual.
And like I know the one difficulty that I face is the translation to the Torah in English are horrible. And in Hebrew, it's basically a masterpiece. This
Sure.
is part of the reason I believe that it's divine, because I believe that God worked through art and storytelling, and that his messengers are what we call today artists. I understand that it's the same about Quran, that it's like in Arabic, it's beautiful poetry, and it cannot really be translated. This is
Correct.
magic.
The Arabic has what they call balagha, which is eloquence in proper Arabic. So a word has so much depth, and the right usage of the word at the right time can elicit strong feelings and strong attitudes, if you will. So sometimes when you translate it to another language, you're trying to at least explain what it means, but it's just not as powerful. You're losing a lot of that power. And then also the eloquence of the Quran in terms of like the poetry and the rhythm and the how it rhymes. In another language, it doesn't do that. So when it's heard in its original form, it's like one powerful thought after another powerful thought after another powerful moral, but all rhyming and spoken in a rhythm. So somebody listening to it, it elicits strong feeling. You're like, this is really, really good. You know what I mean? But if you translate it to any other language, it becomes a little dry, not the same. It's more of explaining a situation, and so much is lost in translation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's same thing. In its original form, it's too hard to duplicate. It's impossible to duplicate. You know what I mean? So most religious people will study the colloquial or Quranic Arabic to understand it in its original form. And more people practice Islam that are non-native Arab speakers than there are that are Arabs. So shows you that it's been able to cross cultural lines in different ethnicities and find a place with many people of many different backgrounds. Yeah.
And how, like, the Torah, we don't have any, we don't really know how it was created. Tradition, according to tradition, it was delivered to Moshe Musa in Mount Sinai. We know, like, that it was sealed by like 500 years before Christ. We know, like, for sure. Tell us a bit about the Quran, the creation of the Quran.
The Quran talks about the creation of the Torah. It also talks about the creation of the Injil. Essentially, it was given.
Sorry. This is what I wanted to ask. Like how it was delivered.
It's essentially it's transmitted through prophets, and these prophets are essentially, as we call them, messengers. And that's what one of the first steps of being a Muslim is, to accept that Muhammad is the prophet of God, and the word is Rasul, and Rasul translates to messenger. He's a messenger, and he's bringing the message of God. But The Quran is very specific in that there are many messengers, and Musa, is a messenger of God. And what was the message that God gave him to deliver? He didn't only give him a message, he also gave him tasks. One of the tasks was to liberate the children of Israel, the children of Jacob, from Egypt, from Pharaoh. So these prophets, some of them had tasks, and they also had a message to deliver from their Lord. Um,
So
so for us is that
I wanted to let's maybe specific. The Quran itself,
yes,
the Quran, the process of it was like delivered to Muhammad, right?
it didn't come down at one time.
Mhm.
The prophecy of Muhammad starts from the age of 40. He passes away at the age of 63. So over 23 periods or 23 years, in those 23 years, he's receiving several revelations. Some people are able to write down the revelations on parchment, but it's coming to a people that lived orally, that had amazing memory. They weren't as distracted as we are today. So that being said, they could focus their energies on certain tasks. And one of the main tasks of the society at the time was remembering poetry. And when there was gatherings, anytime there's gatherings, any person that could share amazing poetry was always seen as the greatest artist. And it was almost competition between who can be the best artist, because the artists, that's how they made their living, that's how they did all these, they got a lot of attention. But the highest art form at the time was this poetry that, it's just this amazing poetry that was Quran. And it all came from this one person who they believed it was being transmitted from God. And it was this extremely powerful poetry that even today, when people hear, it has an immense effect on them psychologically, physically. It can make grown old men cry. It could make the toughest guy soften up. It has this, um, the words are just so strong. They're not associated to humans. They're seen, it's seen as divine words sent by your Lord to comfort you, to also call you into action, and to also um, criticize you if you're doing bad. So how the Quran came into being is over those 23 years, he was sharing the revelations. His believers, a lot of them were memorizing, because it's done it's like an actor that memorizes lines. The Quran comes down in like a specific pentameter, like a very methodical rhythmic poem. So for people who are serious, they can memorize it. The words, it just flows, and it flows in a way that is pleasant to say and pleasant to hear. So those that believe, they invested their energy in essentially memorizing it and sharing it with each other. Some people wrote it on parchment, wood, stone, whatever they can get their hands on. They were just writing it on, and it was something that they just shared among themselves, because when spoken like it is today, it's just something that makes any believer just pause and say, wow, that was really beautiful. You know what I mean?
And what's interesting is that Muhammad was illiterate, right?
Correct. He was illiterate. He was an orphan. He wasn't formally educated. He wasn't a poet before this. He wasn't the guy that would stand up and try to pretend to be a poet. He was just known as a very simple, humble man who married a woman much older than him. And he was just known in the community as being very honest. And that's really it. I mean, he wasn't somebody that was of high status. He didn't have any title. He's just it's just like the good guy in the community that people liked and trusted. And one woman who was much older than him, trusted him enough to ask for him to marry her after, her
Wasn't
husband had passed.
getting him. She was a rich merchant,
Correct.
and, which is something that is.
He worked for her. He was her employee. She would send him on trades. He would go and he would come back with the money and he would hand it to her. And to her, this was a very trustworthy person in a world of business that a lot of people are not trustworthy. So that stood out. you know.
Also, another thing is he was an orphan and little, but he grew up with his uncle, which had a status in the community.
Correct. His uncle Abu Talib essentially took responsibility for him when his parents had passed away. He was a young child. They say the tradition says by the age of 5, essentially he was a full orphan, no mom or dad, and his uncle essentially took responsibility, raising him and funding and financing and taking care of, essentially taking him under his home. And part of the tradition there is, the uncle would let, Muhammad go and spend time with the Bedouins, the nomads. So in the nomadic community, the women play a very central role. So they say that Muhammad had many mothers, not just one, not biological, but many women that played a role in raising him and showing him and in playing the motherly figure in his life. And it wasn't just one, it was quite a few of them. So he already had a very natural affinity, I would say, for women, being that he saw even women that were not his mother were willing to help him and take care of him, you know.
It's very okay. So from here we can connect it to the character of Moshe Musa. We are in the
Yes.
first part, we're the first portion of Exodus, and this is where we see the beginning of Moshe Musa, because we're going to talk about it. Of course, I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but Muhammad also was liberating women and slaves, and he showed like a great deal of sensitivity to the oppressed. And we can see how his biography also, besides his born personality, how his biography
Hmm.
shaped him. And for me, what I find amazing in the Torah is how the psychology of the characters is shaped. That,
Certainly.
as I said, I believe that still now the divine God works through channels, through human channels. And if
Sure.
you want someone to be in some kind of a vessel, then his biography shapes him. And we are in the, and Moshe, there are some things about his character which are so precise. First of all, the connection to women. His father is just it's just mentioned that as reproductive. He just is not really a character that we're dealing with, but he's surrounded by female by women that save him. His mother puts him in the ark. She's at the age of 3 months. His sister watches over him, and the daughter of Pharaoh saves him. And they say that she showed compassion, but achmol, yeah. So it's 3 women that save him. His mother is breastfeeding him, like the daughter of Pharaoh is looking for in Hebrew a woman, and his sister tells her, I know some woman, and it's his mother, and also, and then we see later when he grows up, okay, he goes out of the palace and he sees an Egyptian cop beating a Jewish slave, Israelite slave, and he kills him. And then because he knows that that Pharaoh is looking for him, so he runs away to Midian. And the first scene is that he sees like seven women, daughters of the priest of Midian, and shepherds harass them, and he saves them. And we see like the way he protects women, and his wife also has an important role in because an angel tries to kill Moses because he didn't circumcise. He didn't I don't know how to say it. Circumcision.
Mhm.
Yeah, his son. So she does it actually. So we can see that she's like a strong character. So this also connects us to femininity. Another psychological thing is that, and it's like Muhammad that grew up with his uncle, which wasn't like an ordinary person. It was like someone known and respected in his community, Moses wasn't like one of the slaves. He grew up in the palace, so he had a different self-esteem, a different education. So he could rebel, because the slaves, they cannot rebel because of, they are like broken. And this is
Sure.
the thing. And the most essential thing is that we know that Moshe, Musa, was the humblest, the most modest man on earth. And uh, and like it's mentioned again and again that he stuttered when God asks him to become a leader. So he is not willing to take the role, and he keeps on asking, "Oh, but how can I talk to Pharaoh? I stutter." And this is so, it's like it's not only that he was born with this trait, it's like he's different. He's like queer, and so for me, it's like I don't. In my eyes, it doesn't really matter if a character was real or not real, because this story is a myth, and it's like, and this myth is precise, and stories shape us. And anyway, our memories or the way we think about the world is stories that we tell ourselves. And if this myth is precise, then it's we can connect to it. And so I think that it's like can teach us about the way that God is not like some character in the sky that just, it's just human beings are channels. And so I would like to ask you, how is Moshe Musa? What do you tell about this in the Quran? What is
So
about his
there,
beginning?
he's one of the most widely spoken about prophets. The longest chapter of the Quran is also like the book of Exodus. It's called Surat al-Baqarah, which means the gold calf. It's chapter 2. So you don't have to go very deep into the Quran to begin to understand the importance of Moses and the task. The similarities are they're stark, I should say. Where in the Quran it does in the very eloquent way say how the mother was heartbroken because Pharaoh gave out the order to kill all the young children. Did she hide Moses and put him into the ark, if you will, or the basket, and put him into the Nile River? And then the mother saw that it was, I believe, Pharaoh's daughter that found him, um, and essentially wanted to adopt this young baby that she found on the river. And now the mother's heartbroken because her child is no longer with her. And then through the palace, I don't know exactly how, but they need to breastfeed this child, and she is told that there's a woman that just had a child and she's able to breastfeed, and they basically gave Moses back to his mother, which she then raised him. So although she was commanded to save her child, which she did, Moses's mother would be heartbroken only to be reunited with her child. And then from a I guess an Islamic standpoint is that, God is not punishing. He's not a mean, cruel God. He's a God that understands our pain, but he also works in mysterious ways. Not everything makes sense to us, what's happening, and it's for our good, where the mother would be reunited with Moses. Also, Moses would grow up in the palace. He would grow up with the nobility. He was from the children of Israel, which to us, the children of Israel, meaning the children of Jacob, because his name was changed to Israel. Um, and then essentially he would see as he became a man, a strong man, also, raised in the palace, he saw somebody attacking people he knew were his. He went to defend, and in the result, killed an Egyptian police officer, guard, what have you, and out of fear ran away. He runs into the Sinai. Same story. where the shepherd's daughters are waiting to get water from the well, and a bunch of other shepherds basically harass them and make them wait. And Moses, because he saw them waiting their turn, made sure that they got their turn. And then the girls went back to their father and told him that this guy helped them. And the father demanded to meet this man, and he met Moses and he offered him one of his daughters, and Moses would accept. And then Moses now starts a new life, has a wife, and he's essentially living like a shepherd. And that's why he's got the shepherd's staff. And as he's in the desert one day, is when he sees the light. He goes to see what this fire is. So it's a burning bush, approaches it to get fire for his family, and it speaks to him. And he's in a state of shock. Is this really happening? And it's only proven that this is God when he's told to throw down his staff, his shepherd's staff, and it turns into a snake. And then thereafter turns back into a staff. And then he starts, realizing that this is really happening. And the Lord commands him to go back to Egypt to free his people. And he tells his Lord that he's scared. He doesn't have the ability. He can't speak well. And he asks for a helper from his family. And the Lord grants him his brother, Harun. We know him as Aaron in English. In Arabic, it's Harun. And then essentially, but it's also a very powerful moment, and it's used spiritually, where instead of asking for large armies or a lot of gold, he essentially asks the Lord to open up his chest and put him to ease. And this is always used in a spiritual sense, that when we're going through hardships and we have immense challenges in front of us, we don't need all these external material things. We have everything we need. We just need to calm ourselves and go there and know that God is with us in all that we do. And if our intentions are good, good things will happen. They don't happen the way we want them to happen, but they happen. So, and that's really where faith is drawn from, and belief of God and belief of good. And even when you're up against immense odds, here's a shepherd that has killed somebody in this old kingdom, going back with nothing but his brother and a staff, and hoping that he's going to be successful to free his people. You can imagine that, logically speaking, you're like, well, he's crazy. But he believed, and he was successful and changed history. And yeah, it's the longest chapter in the Quran, and it shows the ties between.
Like, because we're going to talk about the golden calf, because it's there. And I want to say that I mean, I think it's more or less the same story, maybe a bit different, like really different. But what's new, what doesn't exist in the Torah, and it's amazing, is the story from the viewpoint of his mother, that God pitied Moshe's mother, and this is why he, like, the story goes that she breastfed him, and I think the compassion to the female character, to the mother, is beautiful. It also connects to what we talked about before.
Which way? Yeah, for sure. It's all over the Quran. I mean, we can go through several stories. We can, this might be where it deviates somewhat from Judaism, but even Mary, when she was dealing with hardship, but it's always telling the women that you're dealing with tremendous hardship, but God blesses you, like God is with you. It's not about, women are not seen as objects. They're not seen as just, like a side story. They're a very big part of the story. You know what I mean? And they're central in it. And the Quran
also very important in Muhammad's life. Not only Khadija. We're going to talk about this later, about the other wives in his life and his daughter.
Sure. Almost all of them. I don't know how one or the other is. Each one plays a very pivotal role and serves a purpose. And there's no doubt. I mean, even Khadija, they say when she passed away, this is a hadith, we don't know how true it is, but it sounds true, is that when she passed away, he would see her friends, and like one of them would be like washing dishes outside, and he would sit next to her and wash dishes, And the reason was is he just wanted to feel that he was in the presence of Khadijah because he missed her so much.
Oh,
So it's just like seeing a friend of a friend and just wanting to be close because in your mind it made you feel like she was there. You know what I mean? So this is not a brute. This is the exact opposite. You know what I mean? This is somebody that you wanted next to you because you knew you were next to a good person, you know.
okay, I think and, um, I just wanted to say, I remember something which is very important for me to say, that everything is internal. Like Moses seeks for like strength inside, not for external help, but for reassurance, right? For like it doesn't need weapons, or it just needs the confidence that when I say Jewish belief, it's like okay, it's, because you can find a lot of beliefs, but this is what I believe that is the Jewish belief, is that everything is internal. And we get to, and Exodus is like the beginning of the formation of the Jewish Jews as a nation, as a group. But Genesis is about the dynasty. It's about for me, like Genesis is a psychology book, and Exodus is a sociology book. And we see the whole dynasty in the way that it progresses from the first patriarch, Abraham from Mesopotamia, and Yosef is like the son of Yaakov, Abraham, Yitzhak, and then Yaakov, and he was his favorite son, and he just nurtured him like in a way which created jealousy between the brothers. He had there were like 12, they were 12 altogether, and he made him special clothes. He was spoiled, and he's like a narcissist. And then the brothers, they meet him in the field, they want to kill him, then they swim to a well, and then one brother intervenes and said, okay, let's just keep him there. And then another brother says, okay, let's sell him. They were merchants passing by, Ishmaelites, and they took him to Egypt. And there in Egypt, he solves the Pharaoh's dream. He predicts that there is going to be like 7 years of famine. He advises him, and he becomes like the ruler of Egypt after. And then his family comes from Canaan because it's all over, the famine, and he saves them, and they get the status of privileged minority. They get their own land, they have their own occupation, they are like shepherds, which is unacceptable by the Egyptians, and they live really like a very, according to the Torah, they live like a very privileged minority. And at the same time, Joseph creates, there are a few verses which are amazing. Joseph basically creates a slavery system in Egypt, where he takes their money, he takes their cattle, he takes their property, and until they have nothing, and they ask him, they sort of like ask him to become slaves, and he takes their land, transfer them to cities in the fringe of Egypt, and then they become like feudal, like in the feudal system. They work the land and give 20% to the king, and those are like, it's like a chapter that the Jewish interpreters didn't really handle it, but this is like what we can, for me it's prophetic, because this is basically the Jewish history till now, living as a privileged minority, because there are like leaders within the Jewish community that cooperate with the authorities, and up till now we live in slavery system. So they always created like a slavery system to the others, and then they become hated, and then they go through. So we see this theme going through all over history, and inshallah, yeah, inshallah, yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
inshallah, we learn from the Torah, and yeah, and the redemption will come somehow very soon.
Definitely.
because we are living in a slavery system now. Okay, we just started. I mean, it's just like an introduction.
Sure.
Thanks a lot, and
Of course.
yeah, next time I think we'll film in somewhere in Istanbul because it's such an amazing
Happy to. Happy to. Of course.
city.
All right.
Sure.
Well,
So,
toda,
beautiful experience.
Laila Tov. And no, definitely, we can end with, just to let you know, Surah Yusuf, which is Joseph, is one of the most beautiful chapters of the Quran. It's a story, and many people like listening to it because it is just so poetic. And it's very much the same story you just shared, so, but it speaks about Joseph and his father and his relationship with his brothers and his relationship with Pharaoh. And Joseph went through hardship. He was imprisoned in Egypt, and he also was a very beautiful man that, one of the women tried to seduce him, although he was innocent. And um, Yusuf is one of the most common names that Muslims have. And it's just, when you hear in the Quran the story, it just makes a lot of people they really like it. And there's a famous American musician, Cat Stevens, that converted just because of that chapter. When
Wow.
they asked him, why did you convert? He goes, when I heard the story of Joseph in the Quran, the way it's shared made me change my religion. So, and he is Muslim till this day. So Joseph plays a very central role as well. And maybe some point me and you can listen to it and see, and you could see that a lot of the story is, if not the same, very, very close.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
We'll put some
Joseph,
links. We'll put some links
of course, of course.
so that people can.
Mm.
I will also love to learn. I just said to finish, like Joseph, just like Moshe, his character is so realistic. It's like
Mm-hmm.
ecology is so precise that it's amazing, and is a character of an artist. I believe that also Moshe is like an art, what we would call artist.
Sure,
Okay?
sure. I mean, they all, what we, sometimes, and you mentioned it, they all come from the same grandfather, Abraham. So all these prophets seem to come from his line, and that's why they're called the Abrahamic religions. So imagine a father. Okay, maybe he had different wives, but it's still the same father, and the same father had a lot of children, had some children, and those children had children. And that's who we're talking about. We're talking about different grandchildren. You know what I mean? So that's what we're talking about. And everybody might have their opinion of Abraham, but Muslims and Jews both agree that he is the patriarch. He's the one that, when Muslims say they're following Islam, they're following the religion of Abraham. You know what I mean? So
It's
when
not
they
the
pray
same
five
logic. The religion itself, which is more than the story, is it's a social system. It's
yeah, of course.
a
Hmm.
comprehensive social system comes from derived from the same Middle Eastern logic.
It is. He's the central, even right now, the current peace process. I know, we might like dismiss it, but it's called the Abraham Accords. You know what I mean? So they're trying, you know what I mean? I know what yeah, yeah, but I just show you that they keep trying to go back to the roots and saying the grandchildren have to stop fighting. You know what I mean? So, and you're all right, you're all wrong, whatever you want, just stop, like, that's what they're trying to come back at, so,
I'm not sure the
um,
leaders are really into it, but
yeah.
I think people would like.
It's used for, propaganda purposes, of course, but it just shows that the understanding is, that Abraham's children and children, grandchildren, and what have you, need to understand that if they're not listening to the grandpa, that they're not getting it. They're forgetting. So, and then Abraham grew up in a society full of pagans and devil worshippers, and they were. And he stood out because he believed in the singular, powerful God. And everybody has their opinions about his situation, and that's normal. But Even Muslims, when they pray 5 times a day, they have to bless Abraham and they have to bless his children. They have to do it 5 times a day.
Like
You know what I mean?
Islam is full of respect.
Hugely. I mean, to them, they see him. He is their dad. You know what I mean? He's their grandpa. You can't disrespect dad. You know what I mean? That's how it's seen. It's just like that's grandpa. And for all of them, when you say, Abraham, he is our grandfather. So we speak about him. And as we speak of, he is our blood. He is our grandfather. You know what I mean? So,
You know,
um,
I mean, this is something essential that like Jews in Muslim countries or like, empires, or they lived relatively well and were not persecuted as a rule. And it's only Zionism, which is Western European, and that's caused the fight between the Jews and the Muslims.
mhm. We are not in any way supposed to fight Jews or Christians. We're really not. It's a lot of times it's the ones that seem to have caused the problems for us, or converts or people that came to, and they became much more radical and militant than the original adherents. But I would tell you that for sure in Iraq and Morocco, North Africa, Egypt, there were many celebrities that were Jewish. There were many merchants that were very wealthy that were Jewish. They owned property, land, and some of them still live in Israel today and talk about their grandfather missing where he came from. And that's got to tell you something. You don't miss what was bad to you. You miss it because it was good. And they even like it better than where they live sometimes. So um, there's many musicians, there's many doctors, merchants, there's many Jewish philosophers from go back to the 15th, 14th, 17th, 16th. These are they're living in Muslim lands. They're publishing books. They're having Jewish thought. They have synagogues. You can go and see them in Andalusia, in North Africa. You could see them all over the region. That 100 years ago, those synagogues were full. Nobody bothered them. They didn't need security. It wasn't something kept secret. It was something that was built right across the street from the big mosque, and nobody looked twice at it, and you were free to go in there or free to not to go in there, and you were free to go into the mosque and free not to go in there. And just like Istanbul, I mean, you're living here. Do you feel under siege? Do you feel in danger? No. And it's not because Muslims have been suppressed. No, it's natural. We don't view Judaism as the enemy. We view it as something that relates to us, something that comes from the same root, that's a part of us. So if our own holy book says the Torah came from God, why would we disrespect it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Also,
So,
the Jews and the Christians are the Jews are the people of the book, and
yeah,
and they have
Jews and if they do good, then good will be given to them. God will promise them heaven. There's nowhere in the Quran that says that, Jews and Christians go to hell. It doesn't say that. And I can cite it to you. But, it also does say that Islam is the right way. But that doesn't mean it's, that everybody has to believe in it. It's just if you choose to believe in it and continue to believe in it, it will be good for you. You know what I mean? And then everybody has their personal beliefs about other religions, but that's natural. That doesn't mean you have to bother them or affect them or fight them or hurt them. It's not at all. You know what I mean? So,
about Omar. Sorry for this. Is Omar al Khattab. I didn't know about the.
he spent time they say he spent time in Medina, because there was a lot of Jews in Medina, and he would spend time sitting with them. And
Just tell who was he? Omar al Khattab.
Omar Khattab he would become the third Khalifa. Khalifa means successor. Um,
Which time is it?
I'm sorry, he's the second Khalifa. I apologize. This is so the Prophet Muhammad passes away, and then the guy who would then take charge of the Muslim community is Abu Bakr. But his rule would only last, he was an old man, 2 years. But every Khalifa played a very big, a pivotal role. Abu Bakr was an old man, very frail, but very patient and very strong-willed, I would say. So at a time where the community was trying to come apart, he had the ability to keep it together and stand strong. And Abu Bakr, for the 2 years that he led, did an amazing job. And even Omar was known to be like a large man, much stronger. Um, and when he was, they asked him to be the leader, and he looked at Abu Bakr in tears and refused. So that tells you where he saw him, a guy that he can easily take power from. He had too much respect for him. And then when Omar became the leader, Omar was in his younger years, he was a fighter. He was brutal. He drank out, he got drunk. He was basically lived a very, I wouldn't say wild life, but he wasn't a religious man.
Mhm.
And basically, as Islam is growing, he is one of the biggest fighters against it. He's against the movement. He essentially wants to keep the Arab pagans united, and here's this new movement that's breaking them apart. So he takes his sword with the mission to go kill the prophet. And on the way to kill the prophet, he runs into a guy who tells him, before you kill the prophet, you should go kill your sister. She's a Muslim. And he's like in shock. What did you say? That your sister is a Muslim. So Omar goes to his sister's house and he finds her and her husband reading the Quran. And they say he got angry and he slapped her, and it just made him feel very, very bad. And then she read the Quran to him, and then he's like, "This isn't so bad."
What's your name?
So
What's your
his sister, her sister's name, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't want to be misquoted, but I know that it had a very strong impact on. Imagine Omar being
name?
a
Go back
very,
to the woman theme again.
yeah, no,
Yes,
I mean,
the
it's just
woman
like a brother, yeah.
is
I no,
spirit of
yeah,
the
in Arab, I think in their society, they're very protective of their women because they cherish them. You know what I mean? So, um, yeah, no, I don't want to ever take away from the women. That's not, I don't, that's,
I'm
I
just
think,
saying it's another. We know about this story, because
the whole thing about
the
yeah,
women were really
yeah.
respected also intellectually and spiritually.
I
Well, it's
agree.
not,
I
it's
think
not obvious at all.
it's colonialism that makes you believe that Islam subjects women, because it doesn't. It's really Western
I think that
colonial powers,
that's great. That distorted Islam. It's like the
because they want to attack it. They want to destroy it. The same powers that would attack, you want to come to a society and you want to tell yourself that what you're doing is right by, attacking them. And it's you using, they mistreat their women, they're backwards, they're primitive. It makes you feel better. But in fact, you find out that their women are in higher status than yours, that there is equality in
it's
them.
a very big issue because it's I think also in Judaism and in Islam it's like infiltrate. It's like it came also into the religion itself, and not it's not only like an exterior look. Uh,
No, it's a part of it.
but it's not
But
Islam.
yeah.
It's not it's not in the religion itself. It's kind
No,
of
no, 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 no,
compromise.
no,
Not
no, no. If you read the
the opposite.
Quran, you wouldn't.
It's exactly the
There's no,
opposite of
yeah,
the religion itself. This is what I'm trying to say. The religion
yeah,
itself
there,
is black and
yeah.
white.
There's no way. When you read the Quran, a lot of it is about giving women their inheritance, making sure they're looked after, they're taken care of, to never be neglected, to never be left out of,
I think
important
that it's
family
much more
matters.
than that. I think that it's much more than that because uh, in Islam, like the women had also like a spiritual, intellectual world. This is what I'm talking about. Not only as the
Oh
with
yeah.
text that you need to take care of, but Muhammad's women and his daughter, they were Fatima, right? They were perceived also as
Hmm.
like they're important intellectually, and this is what today is not obvious at all in our
They
society.
played a yeah, Zainab and Fatima played a very Fatima would end up marrying his cousin Ali. Ali would become the fourth Khalifa. Zainab is the one that when Hassan Hussein were killed, she's the one that was brought to Damascus, and she had such charisma and such a fiery attitude that I think it was with Hussein's son that she was in the court of the Umayyads, and she gave a very powerful speech, enough to convince this new ruler of a vast empire to let her go with the son of Hussein back to Medina. So she's also regarded. Hind is another woman who, in her early years, was fighting the Muslims. She actually paid a slave to kill the uncle of the prophet because the uncle had killed her father in a previous battle. She cut out the heart and ate it in front of the prophet, just to show you it's pretty graphic. But when the prophet took over Mecca, he forgave her. She thought she would be saved, forced into slavery and sold, as was the tradition before Islam, but the prophet abolished that and he forgave her. And later on in a battle, one of the major battles against the Byzantium Empire, she led the battle. So here's a woman who did so much bad.
We're gonna in the future we're gonna
Yeah.
more and more examples of like
You know what I mean? So women, nobody can dismiss, played a very powerful intellectual, spiritual, and actual physical role in the development of the religion and the development of the community. You know what I mean? So any historian that really is serious knows that. If anybody says no, they don't know what they're talking about, or they're just speaking from hate and ignorance. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So
Oh,
we started with Omar al-Khattab and the way he treated the Jews.
the thing about Omar that, yeah, so you saw this guy, later on he became an intellectual. He spent time with Jews. He would debate and talk to them and understand their religion. When he took over the city of Jerusalem, one of the first things he did is he removed the Roman law barring Jews from living in the city, and he settled a bunch of families from Kinneret, Tiberias, into the old city. So for the first time in 700 years, Jews were able to re-enter Jerusalem and live there again. So that tells you that here is the ruler of the Muslims, and look what he's doing. He's not just putting Muslims in an area and only caring about Muslims. He's bringing people back, and the Jews, and saying, no, you now are welcome to live here. The Romans are gone. Never worried again. And they lived there. Even when the Crusaders came, they slaughtered the Muslims, Jews, and Christians alike in the old city. When Salah ad-Din, another Muslim ruler, took the city over, Jews were allowed to live back again. So even when the Zionists were moving in the 1800s, when it was under the Ottoman Empire, there were Jews there.
Yeah.
How were they there if they were not allowed? Remember, most of the Jews were massacred after the Second Temple was destroyed. So meaning there were Jews that were living there, and a lot of them were living in Jerusalem and Connecticut. Who allowed them to live there? Clearly, and it had been in Muslim hands since the defeat of the Crusades. They lived, they flourished, they owned property. They weren't, if you ask them, did you feel in danger? They'll be like, no, our kids and their kids played every day. And that's the truth.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel that you were in a bad situation or in danger? They're like, we're not the ones in Europe. We're not the ones that had to run away. You know what I mean? So that should tell you something,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, so inshallah we'll אומרים in Hebrew we say להחזיר עטרה ליושנה. עטרה is like a crown, ליושנה is like all. To bring, let's bring back like the original sources of the Torot of the that are from the Middle East,
Mm-hmm.
the cradle of civilization, as they say. And
Yes.
continue, we have a lot to talk about, and I would like to dedicate this talk to a dear friend who fought against the Zionist European colonialization and passed away yesterday, Zranawi.
Allah yarhamah. Mm-hmm. We say God bless his soul. Yeah,
So it's very important.
for sure.
So thanks a lot, and see you in the next parasha.
Of course, inshallah. Laila tov.
לילה טוב.
Good evening. Bye bye.
ביי.